The stars looked different from the observation deck of the ESS Retribution. Captain Sarah Chen had seen countless stellar configurations throughout her 20-year career with Earth's Space Navy. But tonight, the familiar constellations of home glittered with an ominous intensity. She pressed her palm against the reinforced glass, feeling the cold seep through her skin. 3 days ago, she had been planning her retirement. Now, she commanded the vanguard of the largest military fleet humanity had ever assembled. "Captain, the Admiral is requesting your presence in the war room." Lieutenant Rivera's voice was steady, but Chen could hear the tension beneath his professional demeanor. Everyone aboard the Retribution understood what was at stake. "Tell him I'll be right there," she replied, taking one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, among those distant points of light, were the beings responsible for the Nova Colony massacre. The beings who would soon learn the terrible consequences of their actions. The corridors of the massive warship hummed with activity as crew members rushed to their stations. Final preparations were underway. Chen nodded to the personnel she passed, noting the determination in their eyes. Many had lost friends or family in the attack. All of them had seen the footage that had united Earth's nations and colonies like nothing before in human history. Admiral Takahashi stood at the central holodeck when Chen entered the war room. His weathered face was illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays, showing the position of every ship in Earth's fleet. Nearly 500 vessels of varying classes, from nimble interceptors to the imposing dreadnoughts that had never before been deployed outside of Sol system. "Captain Chen," Takahashi acknowledged with a slight nod. "The final ships have arrived from Mars and Europa. We launch in 30 minutes. Chen studied the holographic representation of their armada. "Has there been any response to our transmission?" "None." The Admiral's expression hardened. The Vrexian hierarchy maintains that the Nova Colony incident was a regrettable accident during what they claim was a legitimate security operation. Security operation. Chen's jaw tightened at the euphemism. Nova had been a civilian research outpost with a population of just over 8,000. The settlement included a school where 300 children had been learning about distant Earth when the Vrexian warships appeared in orbit without warning. The footage from Nova's emergency broadcasts had been seared into the collective consciousness of humanity. Terrified researchers and families huddled in shelter bunkers as Vrexian ground forces methodically moved through the colony. The aliens had claimed they were searching for weapons technology being developed in violation of interstellar treaties. Treaties that humanity had faithfully observed since first contact 50 years ago. What happened in the school would forever be known as the breaking point, when 7-year-old Tyler Washington stepped forward, offering his toy spaceship to the armored Vrexian soldiers in a child's innocent attempt at peace. The alien commander had reacted with incomprehensible violence. The subsequent massacre left no survivors. They've reinforced their border outposts. Admiral Takahashi continued, zooming in on the frontier region between human and Vrexian space. "Intelligence suggests they don't believe we'll actually launch a full-scale response. They're counting on the Trade Council to intervene." "The Council had their chance," Chen replied. "They've been deliberating for 2 weeks while the Vrexians destroyed evidence and moved their fleets into defensive positions." Lieutenant Rivera entered with a data tablet. "Captain, Admiral, we've received word from Earth Command. President Okafor has addressed the United Nations. The vote was unanimous. Operation Righteous Response is officially sanctioned under Article 7 of the Interstellar Defense Accord." Chen had never seen such unity among Earth's often fractious political bodies. The images from Nova Colony had accomplished what decades of diplomacy could not: complete solidarity among all human factions. The loss of those children had awakened something primal and resolute in humanity's collective psyche. "Very well," the Admiral said, straightening his uniform. "Captain Chen, prepare your battle group for the first phase. You'll lead the vanguard through the Cygnus Gate and secure the approach to Vrexian territory." "Yes, sir." Chen accepted the mission parameters on her tactical pad. The plan was audacious but meticulously crafted. Earth had been observing Vrexian defenses for decades, cataloging weaknesses while publicly maintaining a stance of peaceful coexistence. That stance had been genuine. Humanity had truly wanted peace, but the Nova Colony massacre had changed everything. As Chen returned to the bridge, she passed the memorial wall hastily established in the main corridor. Photos of Nova's residents covered the surface. Researchers, engineers, colony staff, and children. So many children. At the center was the school picture of Tyler Washington, his smile wide and innocent, unaware that his final act of kindness would become the catalyst for what was about to unfold. "Captain on deck," announced the bridge officer as Chen took her command chair. "Status report," she ordered, her voice calm despite the weight of history pressing down upon her shoulders. "All systems operational. Battle group is in formation and awaiting your command. The rest of the fleet will follow once we've secured the gate." Chen opened a channel to all ships under her command. "This is Captain Chen. In moments, we will make the jump to Vrexian space. We go not just as soldiers, but as representatives of humanity's resolve. What happened at Nova Colony cannot, will not, be forgotten or forgiven without justice." She paused, looking at the tactical display showing the 20 warships under her direct command. The tip of a spear that would soon pierce the heart of Vrexian territory. "The enemy believes we lack the will to respond with appropriate force. They believe that our decades of pursuing diplomatic solutions indicate weakness. Today, they will learn how gravely they have miscalculated." Throughout the fleet, thousands of crew members listened in solemn silence. Many had pinned photos of Nova's children to their stations. Engage jump drives, tactical systems to combat readiness, weapons hot. The massive engines of the ESS Retribution hummed with increasing intensity as energy built up for the faster-than-light jump. Similar reports flooded in from the other ships in her battle group. "For Nova," Chen said quietly, though the open channel carried her words to every ship. "For Nova," came the reply from 19 captains. The stars outside the viewports stretched into brilliant lines as the vanguard of Earth's fleet began its jump. Behind them, the full might of humanity prepared to follow. Hundreds of ships carrying Earth's judgment to those who had dared harm its children. The Vrexian hierarchy was about to discover that humanity's patience and pursuit of peace had never been born of weakness, but of choice, a choice they no longer had the luxury to make. And as the ESS Retribution transitioned to faster than light, Captain Sarah Chen made a silent promise to Tyler Washington and all the children of Nova Colony. Before this was over, the beings responsible would understand exactly what it meant to awaken the full wrath of humanity. The transition from normal space was always disorienting, but Captain Chen had learned to control the momentary nausea decades ago. As the ESS Retribution dropped back into reality, the bridge crew immediately began calling out sensor readings and status reports. The Sickness Gate, a stable wormhole that humanity had discovered 15 years ago, had deposited them exactly where intended. The outer edge of the Vraxan system, a sparse collection of mining outposts that served as the Vrexian hierarchy's first line of defense. "No immediate contacts," reported Lieutenant Rivera, his eyes fixed on the sensor display. "But we're detecting automated defense platforms activating. They weren't expecting us to come through this vector." Chen nodded. The element of surprise had been crucial to their planning. The Vrexians had fortified the main transit routes between their territory and human space, but this approach, through the recently mapped Cygnus Gate, had been classified at the highest levels. Only a handful of exploratory missions had used it before. "Deploy countermeasures," Chen ordered as the rest of her battle group emerged from transit. 20 ships now hung in perfect formation against the backdrop of distant stars. "And begin broadcasting on all frequencies." Communications Officer Patel looked up, surprised. "The combat message, Captain." "No." Chen's expression was grim. "The Nova footage. All of it. I want every Vrexian in this system to see what their leaders have done. This wasn't just about vengeance. It was about truth. The Vrexian population had been fed sanitized accounts of what their military had done on Nova Colony. Most believed it had been a precision strike against weapons researchers. They needed to see the reality. As the battle group moved deeper into the system, Shen received a priority communication from Admiral Takahashi. His holographic form appeared beside her command chair. "Captain, we're receiving unusual readings from our long-range scouts. The Vrexian home fleet appears to be in disarray." Shen frowned. "Explain." "Multiple vessels breaking formation. Some appear to be engaging each other. We're intercepting fragmented communications, suggesting internal conflict." This was unexpected. Earth's intelligence had indicated the Vrexians were unified in their stance regarding the Nova incident. Could there be more to this situation? "Maintain our approach vector," Chen decided, "but have all ships ready to adjust tactics if necessary." The bridge fell silent as everyone processed the implications. The mission parameters had been clear: a surgical strike against Vrexian military installations as a first phase, followed by a push toward their central command. But if the Vrexians were already fighting amongst themselves? "Captain," Rivera called out, urgency in his voice. "We're being hailed. It's a Vrexian vessel. They're broadcasting on an emergency channel." "On screen," Chen ordered, bracing herself for whatever deception the enemy might attempt. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the elongated arthropod-like features of a Vrexian officer. Unlike the battle-armored soldiers from the Nova footage, this one wore what appeared to be a civilian administrator's garb. Behind him, the bridge of his vessel was in chaos, with smoke obscuring portions of the view. "Human vessels," the Vrexian's translator rendered in slightly stilted English. "This is Sub-Coordinator Krevax of the Civilian Oversight Committee. What you have witnessed on Nova Colony was not sanctioned by the Hierarchy Council. We have been betrayed." Murmurs spread across the bridge. Chen raised a hand for silence, her eyes never leaving the screen. "You have 5 minutes to explain before my guns start firing," she stated coldly. The Vrexian made a gesture that their xenologists had identified as indicating extreme distress. The Nova attack was orchestrated by military overseer Drezkor and his faction. They seek to provoke this exact response from Earth. They want this war. Lieutenant Rivera leaned close to Chen. "Could be a deception tactic, Captain. Trying to divide our focus." Chen nodded slightly but kept her attention on the Vrexian. "Why would your military want war with Earth? Your own analysts must realize you cannot win a prolonged conflict against our combined forces. They don't intend to fight alone." Krevax's translator struggled to convey the urgency in his clicking speech. "Drezkor has made a pact with the Threshold Collective. The massacre at Nova was designed to draw your fleet away from Earth. Even now, collective scout ships are probing your outer defenses." The Threshold Collective. Chen felt a chill run through her. Earth had only limited contact with this mysterious alliance of species from beyond the galactic rim. What little they knew suggested a hive-mind civilization with technology far beyond even the Vrexians. "Verifying," Rivera said, already pulling up intelligence archives. "There have been unusual readings in the Kuiper Belt over the past week." Earth Command dismissed them as sensor ghosts. Chen's mind raced. If this was true, they faced an impossible choice: continue their justified vengeance against those responsible for Nova, or turn back to defend Earth against a potentially greater threat. "You're asking me to trust the word of a Vrexian when the bodies of human children are still being recovered from the rubble your forces created," Chen said, her voice tight with controlled rage. "I am sending proof," Krevax responded, transmitting a data packet. "Internal communications between Drezkor and his conspirators. We have been trying to contain this faction, but they control too many military assets. That is why you are seeing our vessels in conflict. The hierarchy is fracturing." As the data transfer completed, Chen nodded to her intelligence officer, who immediately began analyzing it in a secure system isolated from the ship's main computers. "Even if what you say is true," Chen said, "why should humanity care about internal Vrexian politics? Your species allowed monsters to massacre innocents. Because, Krevax replied, Dreskor has given the collective something in exchange for their alliance. Something from Nova Colony. There was nothing on Nova except research facilities, Chen countered. Environmental science. Xenobiology. Nothing of military value. The Vrexian's next words sent ice through Chen's veins. The human child. The one who approached our soldiers. His body was taken by Dreskor's personal guard. We don't know why, but the collective demanded it as part of their agreement. The bridge fell completely silent. Chen stared at the screen, trying to process this new information. What could an alien collective possibly want with the body of Tyler Washington? Before she could respond, proximity alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple contacts. Rivera shouted. Vrexian warships on approach. Heavy cruiser class. They're charging weapons. The moment of truth had arrived sooner than expected. Chen had seconds to decide whether to trust this unexpected source or dismiss it as enemy manipulation. All ships, defensive formation, she ordered, rising from her command chair. But hold fire until my command. The first shots of humanity's vengeance, or possibly its greatest mistake, hung in the balance as the ESS Retribution prepared for combat. Incoming fire. Lieutenant Rivera shouted as the first volley of Vrexian energy weapons sliced through space toward the human battle group. Evasive maneuvers, Chen commanded. Point defense systems active. Return fire on the lead vessel only. The ESS Retribution shuddered as its thrusters fired, narrowly avoiding the brunt of the attack. Two of the smaller ships in her battle group weren't as fortunate, taking glancing hits that flared against their shields. Captain, we've completed analysis of the data transmission, called out Commander Ortiz from the intelligence station. It appears authentic. Internal communications, command codes, everything checks out against what we know of Vrexian protocols. Chen's mind raced. If Sub-Coordinator Krevax was telling the truth, this changed everything. Not just their current mission, but potentially the security of Earth itself. Yet every fiber of her being resisted the idea of turning back without exacting justice for Nova Colony. Sub-Coordinator, Chen addressed the Vrexian, whose transmission still held despite the chaos. If what you say is true, why would the collective want the body of a human child? The aliens' mandibles clicked rapidly in what their cultural briefings had identified as extreme agitation. We don't know with certainty, but there are rumors. The transmission crackled with interference as another barrage of enemy fire passed nearby. The child carried something unique, a genetic anomaly. Our scientists detected it when the transmission cut out as a direct hit rocked Krevax's vessel. Get him back, Chen ordered, but Communications Officer Patel shook her head. Their communications array is offline, Captain, but we're still receiving their transponder signal. They're alive but unable to transmit. The tactical display updated, showing the full scope of the battle unfolding around them. What had initially appeared to be a simple engagement was revealing itself as something far more complex. Vrexian ships were indeed firing on each other, with clear battle lines forming between two factions. Admiral Takahashi is requesting an update, Patel announced. The main fleet is holding position at the Cygnus Gate, awaiting your assessment. Chen stared at the tactical display, the weight of the moment bearing down on her shoulders. 500 ships, the greatest armada humanity had ever assembled, waited on her word. If she gave the signal to advance, they would pour through the gate and unleash devastation on Vrexian space. But if Krevax was right about the Threshold Collective, send the Admiral everything we've learned, Chen decided, and request permission to pursue a modified objective. As the Retribution returned fire against the hostile Vrexian vessels, Chen called her senior officers into a rapid tactical huddle. I believe we're looking at a coup within the Vrexian hierarchy, she explained, pointing to the battle patterns emerging on the display. These ships here appear to be protecting civilian habitats. Those are targeting both us and their own people. Classic signs of a military faction attempting to seize power. But Captain, Rivera interjected, even if that's true, they still murdered our people on Nova. Yes, Chen agreed, her expression hardening. And they will answer for that. But we need to be precise about who they are. If we destroy the entire Vrexian civilization in our rage, we may be doing exactly what this threshold collective wants. The bridge fell silent as her words sank in. The mission had suddenly become far more complicated than a straightforward retribution strike. What about the child? Asked Commander Ortiz quietly. Why would anyone take Tyler Washington's body? Before Chen could respond, a priority alert sounded from the communication station. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Defense Command, Paddle reported, her face pale. Multiple unknown vessels have appeared in the Sol system. They've bypassed our outer defense grid without triggering alarms. The bottom dropped out of Chen's stomach. The collective, she whispered. Admiral Takahashi is redirecting half the fleet back to Earth, Paddle continued. He's ordering us to. She paused, listening intently to the incoming transmission. He's ordering us to capture military overseer Dreskor alive if possible. Earth intelligence believes he holds crucial information about the collective's capabilities and intentions. Chen's jaw tightened. Where is Dreskor now? Rivera quickly consulted the tactical display, cross-referencing with the intelligence they'd received from Krevax. Based on these command codes and ship identifiers, he appears to be on that command vessel. He pointed to a massive Vrexian dreadnought at the center of the hostile formation. The one that's moving away from the battle, Chen observed. He's running. A plan formed in Chen's mind, audacious and dangerous, but perhaps their only option for both justice and answers. Lieutenant Rivera, plot an intercept course. Commander Ortiz, prepare a boarding team. Patel, signal the rest of our battle group to engage the hostile Vrexian vessels, but avoid firing on those protecting civilian stations. Captain, Rivera protested. That's a dreadnought. Even with their forces divided, it's heavily defended. We'd need the entire battle group to take it on directly. We're not going to take it on directly, Chen replied, tapping commands into her tactical console. We're going to use the confusion of this civil conflict to get close. They're so busy fighting each other, they might not notice one more ship in the chaos. As the orders went out, Chen opened a channel to Sub-Coordinator Krevax's vessel, hoping their receiving capabilities were still functional. Sub-Coordinator, this is Captain Chen. If you can hear this, we're pursuing Dreskor. Any information on his vessel's vulnerabilities would be appreciated. To her surprise, a text-only response appeared moments later. Ventral shield generator overloads when firing main weapons. Approach from below. We'll send allied vessels to assist if possible. Chen allowed herself a grim smile. Helm, take us in. Full stealth protocols. All non-essential systems dark. The ESS Retribution broke away from the main engagement, powering down its external lights and emission systems as it curved toward the fleeing dreadnought. In the chaos of battle, with Vrexian ships firing on each other and energy discharges lighting up the void, they might just have a chance to approach undetected. Boarding team standing by, Captain, reported Commander Ortiz. 20 of our best. Heavy weapons and tactical gear prepped. On the main view screen, the massive Vrexian vessel grew larger. Its strange, arthropod-inspired design made it look like a gigantic metal insect, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Somewhere aboard that ship was the being responsible for the deaths of hundreds of innocent children, and potentially the key to understanding why Earth now faced a new unknown threat. 2 minutes to optimal position, announced the helm officer. Chen stood from her command chair, straightening her uniform. I'll be joining the boarding party. Her officers looked up in surprise, but something in her expression prevented objections. This was personal now, not just for her, but for all of humanity. The face of Tyler Washington flashed in her mind, his innocent gesture of peace met with unthinkable cruelty. What exactly are we after, Captain? Ortiz asked as they headed toward the launch bay. Chen checked her sidearm, her expression resolute. "Two things, Commander. Justice for Nova Colony, and answers about why a child's body was so important that it might have triggered an interstellar war." As the Retribution slipped into the shadow of the massive Phyrexian dreadnought, proximity alarms began to sound. They'd been spotted. "No or never," Chen muttered as the boarding shuttles prepared to launch. Whatever waited aboard that vessel, whether answers, justice, or death, the time for hesitation had passed. The boarding shuttle jerked violently as enemy fire grazed its hull. Captain Chen braced herself against the bulkhead, exchanging grim looks with Commander Ortiz and the 18 other members of the assault team. Each face reflected the same determination, the same controlled rage. They all knew the mission: capture Drescor, learn why Tyler Washington's body had been taken, and make sure those responsible for Nova Colony paid the price. 30 seconds to contact," announced the pilot, her voice steady despite the danger. "Brace for emergency docking. They're trying to seal the hangar bay." The shuttle's engines screamed as the pilot pushed them beyond safe operational parameters. Through the viewport, Chen could see the massive hangar doors of the Phyrexian dreadnought slowly closing, a gap that narrowed with each passing second. "We're not going to make it," Rivera muttered beside her. "We'll make it," Chen replied, her faith in her crew absolute. The shuttle shot forward, rolling 90 degrees to slip through the narrowing gap. Metal screeched against metal as they scraped through, losing part of the shuttle's outer hull in the process. With a bone-jarring impact, they crashed onto the hangar deck, skidding to a halt amid sparks and debris. "Move, move, move," Chen ordered as the shuttle's ramp dropped. The boarding team poured out into the alien hangar, immediately taking up defensive positions behind cargo containers and maintenance equipment. Phyrexian security forces were already responding, their insectoid forms moving with unsettling speed across the vast chamber. Energy weapons fired, filling the air with the scent of ozone and burning metal. "Forward, toward that corridor," Chen directed, pointing to what appeared to be a main access way. "Rivera, Ortiz, take point. The rest of you, covering fire." As they fought their way through the hangar, Chen's comm unit crackled to life. "Captain, this is the Retribution. We're taking heavy fire from the Dreadnought's escort vessels. We can't maintain position much longer." "Understood," Chen replied between bursts of her own weapon. "Fall back to a safe distance. We'll find another way off this ship." The comm officer hesitated. "Ma'am, there's something else. We're detecting unusual energy readings throughout the Phyrexian vessel. It doesn't match any known weapon signature." Before Chen could respond, a massive tremor ran through the entire dreadnought, strong enough to momentarily throw the boarding team off balance. The Phyrexian security forces seemed equally surprised, their attacks faltering. "What was that?" Ortiz questioned, steadying himself against a wall. The answer came in the form of a ship-wide announcement, the Phyrexian language translated by their combat suits systems. "Priority alert to all personnel. Threshold technology activating. Evacuation protocols in effect." Repeat. "Evacuation protocols in effect." Chen exchanged alarmed glances with Rivera. "They're abandoning ship. Whatever Drescor is planning, it's happening now." The team pushed forward with renewed urgency, encountering less resistance as many Phyrexian crew members now seemed more intent on reaching escape pods than stopping the human intruders. They moved deeper into the massive vessel, following the directions from their intelligence data toward the command center where Drescor would most likely be found. Another violent tremor shook the ship, stronger than the first. Warning lights pulsed along the alien corridors, and somewhere in the distance, they could hear what sounded like tearing metal. "Captain," Rivera said, consulting his scanner, "these energy readings are increasing exponentially. And they're coming from the center of the ship, not from their engine section." Chen's instincts screamed that they were running out of time. Double time. Push forward. They encountered a sealed blast door, clearly separating them from the command section. As Ortiz placed breaching charges, Chen's comm unit activated again. Captain Chen, this is Sub-Coordinator Krevax. The Vrexian's voice was urgent, the translation software struggling to keep up with his rapid speech. You must withdraw immediately. Dresscore has activated threshold technology. The child. The transmission cut out in a burst of static. Charges set, Ortiz reported. Blow it, Chen ordered, taking cover. The explosion reverberated through the corridor, and as the smoke cleared, the team surged through into what appeared to be an antechamber to the main bridge. What they found stopped them in their tracks. The chamber was dominated by a massive cylindrical device, unlike any technology Chen had ever seen. Its surface rippled with patterns of light that seemed to defy normal physics, casting impossible shadows and bending the space around it. At its center, suspended in a field of energy, was a small human form. Tyler Washington. His body, perfectly preserved, hung in the strange energy field, orbited by artifacts and devices of clearly alien origin, technology that looked neither Vrexian nor human. "My God," Rivera whispered, his weapon lowering involuntarily in shock. Before they could process what they were seeing, a voice spoke from the far side of the chamber. "So, Earth sends its warriors at last." Military Overseer Dresscore stepped into view, his towering insectoid form encased in ornate battle armor. Unlike other Vrexians they had encountered, his exoskeleton was marked with strange, glowing sigils that pulsed in rhythm with the cylinder containing Tyler's body. "You're too late," Dresscore continued, his translator rendering his clicks and chittering into eerily calm English. "The process is already underway. The threshold opens." Chen raised her weapon. "Shut it down now, or I put a round through whatever passes for your head." The Vrexian made a sound that their translators interpreted as laughter. "You still don't understand what you're witnessing, do you? You think this is about your species and mine, about revenge or politics." He gestured toward Tyler's suspended form. "This child is the key, the first human born with the genetic sequence we have sought for centuries." Another violent tremor shook the ship, stronger than any before. The lights throughout the chamber flickered, and the strange cylinder began to pulse more rapidly. "What are you talking about?" Chen demanded, advancing a step closer, her weapon unwavering. "He was just a child." "No," Dresscore replied. "He was far more than that, a 1 in a billion genetic anomaly. His DNA contains markers identical to those in the ancient ruins we discovered 50 years ago, ruins left by those who came before both our species." The chamber trembled again, and a strange humming filled the air, building in intensity until it was almost painful. "The Threshold Collective didn't ally with us," Dresscore revealed, his alien features impossible to read. "They have been guiding us for decades, preparing us to find one such as him. And now that we have activated his genetic key," the cylinder suddenly flared with blinding intensity, forcing the humans to shield their eyes. When they could see again, the impossible had happened. Where Tyler's body had been suspended, a tear now formed in the fabric of space itself, a shifting, pulsing gateway that revealed glimpses of something beyond. "What have you done?" Chen whispered, horrified. Dresscore spread his upper limbs in a gesture almost like benediction. "I have opened the way for their return, the ancestors who seeded both our worlds with life, the ones your kind might call gods." Through the tear in reality, massive shapes began to move, approaching the opening from the other side. "Fall back," Chen ordered her team, the mission parameters shattering in the face of this new incomprehensible threat. "We need to warn Earth." As they retreated, Dresscore made no move to stop them. His attention was fixed entirely on the widening tear and what was emerging from it, entities of light and matter that defied description. The last thing Shen heard as they ran from the chamber was Dresscore's voice, almost reverent. "They have waited so long to return, and now, thanks to one small human child, all life in this galaxy will be reborn. Hold position." Chen ordered as her team reached a junction in the corridor, far enough from the chamber to regroup but not yet clear of danger. The entire dreadnought shuddered continuously now, the metal groaning under stresses it was never designed to withstand. "Captain, what the hell did we just see in there?" Ortiz asked, his usual composure shaken. Chen's mind raced. "I don't know exactly, but we need to shut it down. Rivera, contact the Retribution. Tell them we need everything they've got on that chamber, and I mean everything. Full tactical strike." Rivera nodded grimly, activating his comm unit. The rest of the team secured the corridor, weapons ready as distant alarms wailed throughout the massive vessel. "Captain," one of the tactical specialists called out, checking readings on her scanner. "That tear, portal, whatever it is, it's expanding. And these energy readings are off the charts." "The Retribution is responding," Rivera reported. "They're moving back into firing position, but they're taking heavy damage from the remaining Phyrexian forces loyal to Dreskor." Shin made a quick decision. "We need to get back in there. Whatever's coming through that portal, we can't let it reach our universe fully." "With all due respect, Captain," Ortiz countered, "what exactly do you think we can do against whatever those things were?" Before Chen could answer, her comm unit crackled with a new transmission. "Captain Chen." It was Krevax again, his translator struggling with what sounded like panic in his alien voice. "The ancient texts, we misunderstood. The ancestors don't wish to guide us. They consume. They." The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Chen looked at her team. 20 of Earth's finest soldiers, now possibly all that stood between humanity and extinction. "We have one advantage," she said finally. They needed the child's body as a key, a genetic key. "So?" Rivera questioned. "So the lock and key have to match," Chen replied, an idea forming. "They needed his specific genetic code to open that portal. What if we could alter it? Corrupt the key?" The team's science specialist, Dr. Hayes, spoke up. "It could work. If we could introduce a destabilizing agent to the child's DNA, it might disrupt the quantum field maintaining the portal." She hesitated. "But Captain, we'd need to get close to the body to do it, and those things were already coming through." Chen checked her sidearm, determination hardening her resolve. "Then we move fast. Hayes, what would you need?" "Yeah, I have a genomic destabilizer in my kit. It's designed for emergency decontamination of biohazards, but it could work. It would essentially scramble his DNA structure at the molecular level." "Then that's our plan," Chen decided. "We go back in, deploy the destabilizer, and get out before the portal collapses." As they prepared to return to the chamber, Rivera received another transmission from the Retribution. "Captain, Admiral Takahashi reports that similar portals are beginning to form near Earth and other human colonies. Whatever Dreskor activated, it's not isolated to this ship." The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. This wasn't just about saving themselves or even this ship. The entire human race, possibly all sentient life, hung in the balance. "Move out," she ordered, her voice calm despite the crushing weight of responsibility. "We finish this now." They fought their way back to the chamber, encountering scattered resistance from Phyrexian troops who seemed disorganized and panicked. When they reached the entrance, Chen held up a hand, signaling the team to halt. Through the doorway, they could see the chamber was transformed. The cylindrical device had expanded, the tear in reality now a pulsing, swirling vortex that dominated the room. Dreskor stood before it, arms raised in what appeared to be worship. Around him, several Phyrexian officers lay dead, their bodies contorted as if they had died in agony. Most disturbing of all were the entities emerging from the portal. No longer just shapes of light, they had begun to take physical form, towering, impossible geometries that hurt the eye to look upon directly. Where they touched the ship's structure, matter seemed to decay and transform. "Hayes," Chen whispered, "how close do you need to get?" "The child's body," Hayes replied, readying her device. "I need direct contact." Chen nodded. Cover fire on my mark. Hayes and I will advance toward the cylinder. The rest of you, keep those things occupied. She took a deep breath, centered herself, and gave the signal. The team burst into the chamber, weapons firing in a coordinated pattern that momentarily drew the attention of both Dreskor and the emerging entities. Chen and Hayes sprinted toward the cylinder, dodging energy discharges as Dreskor roared in rage. Defilers, the Vrexian commander bellowed. You cannot stop ascension. Chen ignored him, focusing solely on reaching Tyler's suspended body. As they neared the cylinder, one of the partially formed entities shifted toward them, a limb-like appendage stretching out impossibly fast. Down, Chen shouted, tackling Hayes to the deck as the appendage passed overhead, leaving a trail of decaying metal in its wake. They scrambled the last few meters to the cylinder. Up close, Chen could see Tyler's face clearly for the first time. Peaceful, as if sleeping, unaware that his body had become the focal point of an interstellar conflict. I'm sorry, she whispered as Hayes prepared the destabilizer. Suddenly, Dreskor was upon them, his massive form looming over Hayes. I will not allow this, he raged, one clawed limb raised to strike. Chen threw herself between them, firing her weapon point-blank into the Vrexian's body. The shots penetrated his armor, but he seemed beyond pain, driven by fanatical purpose. The ancestors will remake all worlds, he hissed as they grappled. They will erase the flawed creations and begin anew. It is evolution. It's extinction, Chen countered, struggling against his superior strength. Hayes, now. The science officer lunged forward, pressing the destabilizer against Tyler's suspended form and activating it. The device hummed, then pulsed with blue-white energy that spread throughout the child's body. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The cylinder's lights flickered, then flared blindingly bright. The portal began to fluctuate wildly, its edges contracting and expanding in rapid, violent pulses. It's working, Hayes shouted over the mounting chaos. The genetic pattern is degrading. Dreskor howled in fury, throwing Chen aside with enough force to slam her against a bulkhead. What have you done? He screamed, rushing toward Hayes. He never reached her. One of the entities, perhaps sensing the portal's instability, lashed out with multiple appendages, not at the humans, but at Dreskor himself. The Vrexian's scream cut off abruptly as he was lifted and pulled toward the fluctuating tear. Fall back, Chen ordered, recovering her footing. Everyone out now. The team retreated as the chamber began to collapse around them. The very structure of the ship warping under the influence of the destabilizing portal. The entities seemed to be retreating back through the tear, their partially formed bodies dissolving as the gateway that had summoned them failed. They barely made it to the hangar bay, where a single Vrexian shuttle remained. As Rivera piloted them away from the disintegrating dreadnought, they watched through the viewport as the massive vessel imploded, collapsing in on itself in a silent, terrifying display of physics gone wrong. The Retribution is hailing us, Ortiz reported, relief evident in his voice. They're sending coordinates for rendezvous. Chen nodded, finally allowing herself to exhale. And the other portals, the ones near Earth. Collapsing, Ortiz confirmed after checking the incoming data. Whatever you did, it affected all of them simultaneously. The immediate danger had passed, but Chen felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Too many had died, on Nova Colony, on the Vrexian vessels loyal to Krevax, even the misguided forces following Dreskor. And Tyler Washington, a child who had unknowingly carried within him something that almost ended all life as they knew it. As the shuttle approached the Retribution, Admiral Takahashi's voice came through the comm. Captain Chen, your team's actions have saved not just Earth, but possibly all life in known space. The President has already authorized the highest commendations. Thank you, Admiral, Chen replied automatically, her thoughts elsewhere. There's something else, Takahashi continued, his tone changing. Before the portals collapsed completely, our sensors detected Transmissions. Data packets of some kind, flowing both ways through the tiers. Chen frowned. Both ways. You mean something came through to our side? And something went from our side to theirs. Takahashi confirmed. We're still analyzing it, but preliminary results suggest it was some kind of information exchange. Captain, we think they got what they wanted all along. Which was information about us, about all life in our universe. The Admiral paused, and they left something in return. Data appearing simultaneously in systems across Earth and all colonies. It appears to be instructions. Instructions for what? Chen asked, feeling a new dread building. We don't know yet, but the first translations suggest it's how to build something. Takahashi's voice dropped lower. Captain, I believe we stopped an invasion today, but I'm not convinced we've seen the last of these entities. As the shuttle docked with the Retribution, Chen stood at the viewport, looking back at the debris field where the Vrexian dreadnought had been. The immediate threat was over, the battle won. But as she watched distant flashes of light, Vrexian and human ships still engaging in the aftermath of chaos, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. 3 weeks after the battle, Captain Sarah Chen stood at the window of her temporary quarters on Earth's orbital command station. Below, the blue-white sphere of humanity's homeworld turned slowly, deceptively peaceful from this distance. The last time she had seen Earth from space, she'd been departing with vengeance in her heart, commanding the vanguard of a fleet bent on retribution. Now she returned not as an avenger, but as something more complicated, perhaps a savior, perhaps a harbinger. A chime at her door announced Admiral Takahashi's arrival. He looked older than when she'd last seen him in person, the events of recent weeks etched into the lines of his face. The memorial service for Nova Colony is scheduled for tomorrow, he said without preamble. The President has requested you speak, but I told her I needed to confirm with you first. Chen nodded, still looking at Earth. I'll speak. Those families deserve to hear directly from someone who was there at the end. She turned to face her superior officer. Have we made any progress deciphering the instructions left behind? Takahashi's expression tightened. That's actually why I'm here. Our best cryptographers and xenolinguists have been working around the clock. We've managed to translate approximately 12% of the data. And it appears to be plans for a communication device of some kind, far more advanced than anything we currently possess. The working theory is that it would establish a permanent link to wherever those entities came from. Chen felt a chill at the implications. Have we shared this with the Vrexians? With Krevax's faction? Limited information only. Takahashi confirmed. Their hierarchy is still in chaos after Dreskur's death, but Krevax has emerged as a voice of reason. He's proposed a joint human-Vrexian commission to study the data under strict controls. Chen moved to her desk, where images of the Nova Colony victims were displayed, not as a reminder of vengeance now, but as a memorial to what had been lost and what had nearly been lost. Her fingers touched the image of Tyler Washington. What was so special about him? She asked quietly. Why his genetic code specifically? Takahashi approached, handing her a data tablet. The medical team finally identified the anomaly. It's extraordinarily rare. A specific sequence in his mitochondrial DNA that occurs in less than 1 in 10 billion humans. He paused. The same sequence has been found in ancient human remains dating back over 12,000 years, and in certain Vrexian genetic samples as well. Chen scanned the report, the scientific terminology beyond her expertise, but the implications clear enough. So these ancestors really did have contact with both our species in the distant past. It appears so. They may have influenced our evolution, perhaps even engineered specific traits. Takahashi's voice dropped lower. The really troubling part is what we found when we went back and analyzed the Nova Colony attack footage more carefully. The Vrexian soldiers weren't just looking for Tyler specifically. They tested multiple children before finding him. Chen's grip tightened on the tablet. You're saying they knew what they were looking for all along. Dress Corps had been planning this for years, possibly decades. Nova Colony wasn't chosen at random. Settlement records show that Tyler's family had been specifically recruited through an educational outreach program with unusually generous terms. The pieces clicked together in Chen's mind. They identified his genetic markers from medical records, then arranged for his family to be on Nova, isolated and vulnerable. The cold calculation of it sickened her. Dress Corps made sure his perfect genetic key was exactly where he needed it to be. Precisely. Takahashi took back the tablet. Which brings us to the more immediate concern. The Security Council meets tomorrow to decide what to do about the instructions left behind. And what are the options? There are three main factions forming, he explained. Those who want to build the device, believing we need to understand what we're facing. Those who want to destroy all copies of the instructions as too dangerous to pursue, and those pushing for a middle ground. Controlled research with multiple failsafes. Chen considered this, thinking of everything she had witnessed aboard the Phyrexian dreadnought. And the Threshold Collective. Any sign of them? Nothing conclusive, but there have been reports of unusual activity in several remote star systems. Ships disappearing, communications disrupted. Takahashi moved to the window, standing beside her. Whatever connection was established when those portals opened, I believe it goes both ways now. They're aware of us in a way they weren't before. For several moments, they stood in silence, both contemplating the vast darkness beyond Earth's protective atmosphere. I've been offered a promotion, Chen said finally. Fleet Admiral, overseeing a new joint defense initiative with the Phyrexian moderates. Will you take it? She turned from the window. Do I have a choice? Someone needs to prepare us for what might be coming. Someone who's seen them firsthand. The next day, the memorial service for Nova Colony was held in Earth's largest public square. Millions attended in person, billions more watching via holographic projections across Earth and all its colonies. Captain, soon to be Admiral. Chen stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of faces united in grief and resolve. Today we honor those lost at Nova Colony, she began, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her words. We remember them not just as victims, but as unwitting participants in a conflict far older and larger than any of us understood. She spoke of Tyler Washington, not simply as a tragic symbol, but as a brave child who, in his final moments, had offered friendship to those who came as enemies. His simple gesture of peace, offering his toy spaceship, had been the purest expression of humanity's better nature. In the weeks since the attack, much has changed, Chen continued. Old enemies have become cautious allies. New threats have emerged from beyond the stars. But one thing remains constant, our determination to protect our home, our people, and our future. She didn't mention the mysterious instructions left behind, or the debate raging in secured chambers about whether to follow them. Those were matters for another day. Instead, she spoke of resilience, of the unprecedented unity that had formed in the wake of Nova's destruction. As the ceremony concluded, Chen placed a small toy spaceship, a replica of the one Tyler had offered, on the memorial stone. It was a small gesture, but one that everyone understood. A promise to remember, and a promise to defend. That evening, as the memorial lights shone up into the night sky from every human settlement across Earth and its colonies, Chen received her new commission in a private ceremony. The uniform felt heavier than her old one, the responsibility greater. Humanity and Phyrexians alike now stood at a crossroads, aware for the first time that they were not alone in the cosmos, and that what waited beyond their familiar stars might not be benevolent. The mysterious ancestors, the Threshold Collective, the strange instructions left behind, all were pieces of a puzzle still taking shape. But as Chen looked out at the stars that night, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Not naive optimism, but the determined hope of a species that had faced extinction and refused to succumb. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together. The stars had never seemed so close or so dangerous, but they had never seemed so important to reach either. The journey that began with a child's murder had transformed into something far more profound, a realization that in the vastness of the cosmos, the choices each species made would determine not just their survival, but their soul. And Earth's fleet, once launched for vengeance, now stood ready for something greater: the defense of all sentient life against whatever awaited beyond the threshold of the known universe.